Welcome to the Power of Music podcast, brought to you by JM International. Get ready to explore conversations with those making a difference through music.
Hello, and welcome everyone to the Power of Music podcast, provided to you by JMI, Jeunesse Musicale International, a global network of NGOs that empowers young people through music across all boundaries. Today, we are recording from the Future Music Forum in Barcelona, Spain, and this will be the first episode in a series recorded during this amazing conference. My name is Ricardo, and I'll be your host, and for this episode, I'm joined by Tom Middleton. Tom is a multi-award-winning sound designer and composer, DJ and producer, innovator of digital audio therapeutics, functional spatial soundscapes, and science-based wellness music, helping millions to focus, relax, reduce anxiety, and sleep better every night. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, the first question, what has been your journey into music?
Absolute pleasure to be on this podcast. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm Tom Middleton. I'm an award-winning sound designer, composer, and co-founder of White Mirror Studio, which is a wellness innovation consultancy. My journey starts actually probably the age of about 6 or 7, and I vividly remember my dad sitting me in the sweet spot between a pair of speakers. He was a bit of an audiophile. So he had these amazing quad speakers, tannoy speakers, and quad amplifier, and a record deck. And he played this album to me. And sitting in the stereo sweet spot at that point, listening to this spatialized music moving around, and I vividly remember having goosebumps for the first time, getting like the shivers, the tingles from listening to this music. And the album was Snowflakes Are Dancing by Isao Tomita, a Japanese classical but synthesizer composer.
Wow.
So he changed my whole perspective on the music that was in the background growing up. On the radio, my dad was listening to all kinds of stuff. But there was this album that literally blew my mind. And to this day, I don't think anyone has ever matched the sonic fidelity and the ingenuity with which he used synthesizers to create these ethereal soundscapes. And they were classical compositions, but retranslated to synthesizer. And this is back in the time when we didn't have DAWs, we didn't have the technology to be able to layer things together. So, I mean, if you listen to it, you'll be mind blown at the sort of sounds you're hearing. Lots of Moog, Roland, and the back of the sleeve had all these modular synthesizers and a list of all the equipment. And so obviously I was fascinated. So this music that's giving me goosebumps and taking me on a journey, literally taking me into time and space, warping time and space for me, is inspiring me. And I suppose that was the start of this sort of interest in music. I then went on to study classical cello, piano, and a bit of guitar. And I played in an orchestra, and that was wonderful because playing cello in an orchestra gives you a real sense of the spatialization of audio. And particularly when an orchestra is recorded, if you listen back in stereo, you'll hear the instrument in space. So if I think about everything I do now, all of these things start to add up. Okay, right, so synthesizers at a really early age, the emotional effect of listening to music, the spatialization of sound. And then the journey just became one of becoming a teenager. I got my first Sony Walkman with headphones that had a radio and a microphone. So I started doing experiments, recording things. My brother, who was pretty smart, managed to hack it and put a potentiometer into the battery compartment that allowed it to become a very speed Walkman. So we used to have a lot of fun speeding things up and slowing things down. Very kind of rudimentary. And I would religiously... Exactly, right. And I would religiously listen to the radio every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening. And in England, we had a number of radio shows that were really quite important. One of them was the chart show, the Top 40. And I loved that, obviously, because it was pop music and it tied in with a TV show called Top of the Pops. Mm-hmm. And then after that, there were different radio shows that started to broaden my musical horizons. John Peel in the Week used to play all kinds of extraordinary music. I mean, anything from the bizarrest kind of experimental alt rock to world music to electronic music, and that plus Sunday night listening to Robbie Vincent. And Robbie Vincent was a soul boy, and he used to play boogie, the electronic kind of boogie. So after disco, which was produced using instruments, it became a bit more electronic. So I was really into boogie, and then after that sort of, and soul and slow soul. And then there was another broadcaster called the Rankin Miss P, and she'd play reggae music. So I kind of got like a real broad sense of different styles of music, and just became a music addict. I was consuming in the way that we can now find anything. I was hunting for all these new things. Started making my own compilations on cassettes, and then we was playing them, swapping them around. And the more we got into music, and then going to the school discos, dancing, expressing yourself, listening to certain sounds, I was really into synth pop at that time, and all the kind of synthetic sounds that I was hearing, like Simmons drum machines and all the kind of Roland and Korg and Yamaha synths. And then at school, when I was studying classical music, in the music room one day, this synthesizer appeared, a Yamaha DX21. And I remember my eyes lit up. Oh, okay, this is going to be interesting. And I guess, at that point, I just completely fell in love with the idea of programming sounds that were in your imagination. Obviously, the presets of all of these instruments at that time were to mimic real-world sounds, which I found quite bizarre because I wanted to create things that I didn't know about. Anyway, moving forward through surfing, skating, breakdancing, and graffiti down in Cornwall, I went to a nightclub in Newquay, just outside of it. This is Cornwall, deep southwest of England, and there was a nightclub called the Bowgie Inn, and this was next to a beach called Polyjoke, which sounds funny in itself. And on this beach, cows were allowed to roam. It was like the weirdest thing to sort of walk down. I mean, you can imagine the scene, a surreal scene of cows on a beach. Anyway, so this nightclub, all of it adds to okay, this is a really bizarre place. And so this nightclub, when we were old enough to go, and like the first of our friends that was 18 that could get a car, we'd start going to this nightclub. And there was a DJ called Paul Guntrip, bless, he's not around anymore, but he would bring down from London all the records that he played in the WAG Club. And the WAG Club at that time was the first acid house club in London. And so he was in that scene with the original, the OG Chicago house, Detroit techno, and New York garage DJs that would play these imported records. And we get this new sort of insight into these incredible sounds, blowing our minds. And so that sort of developed. And then another night down there, I remember there was a couple of guys playing on decks. One was called Piers, and he'd started a night. And this other guy called Peabod, which means phonic boy on dope. Peabod. Turns out that Peabod was the Aphex Twin. And I was on the dance floor, and I remember myself and a few of our friends, and weirdly, these are all people that you may have come across. Luke Vibert, you might have come across Grant Wilson Claridge, Reflex Records, Manuel Sepulveda, who has done artwork for Warp and for Hyperdub. So we were there was a bit of a scene going on there. And then this, we suddenly were immersed in some sounds that were not even like the imported house and techno records, even the Euro sound. So there was Belgian New Beat, there was the R&S record sound, there were a number of kind of labels in Holland. And then there was this guy playing sounds that we couldn't get our heads around it. And I went up to the decks, and there's no record on the decks. He's playing a tape. And what we'd heard was proto jungle breakbeat, so sped up kind of beats with a squelchy, distorted kind of acid, but not like the acid 303 sound, but a different kind of sound. turns out it was an SH-101 that was distorted through a desk. And right in the middle of this song, there's this flanged, crazy voice, and we all realize it's Julie Andrews from The Sound of Music. And it completely, mind fucked us, because this guy's playing his own tunes off tape, and it's like nothing else. It was faster than all the other music we'd heard at that time.
Just get rid of this image of, sometimes when you go out of a club and you have experienced this like awe or wonder, and you're like, wow, and then there's cows on the beach.
Exactly. And a lot of people were tripping as well. It was back in the days of microdots and that kind of stuff. And so, I went up and introduced myself. We got chatting. Obviously, we had a lot in common musically, and then discovered we both shared the same birth date, which was kind of weird. He invited me to his place, and walking into his room, immediately I noticed that, this guy's got a really interesting perspective, and he knows something about sound and hi-fi. He'd mounted giant speakers from the ceiling, like suspended, and would monitor his sound. So semi-isolating the speakers. I mean, this is acoustic science at the age of 17, 18, mind-blowing. He'd been studying, I think, electronics, and I noticed there was a Roland SH-101 with a lid off. And he explained to me that what he'd done is he'd changed the factory preset setting of the frequency potentiometer beyond human hearing range, which is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So even that's quite difficult to perceive, but the high end and the low end. But he wasn't happy with that. So he took it down to 1 hertz and up to ultrasonic, I don't even know, 50 kilohertz or something, who knows. And, I just remember kind of listening and observing and, watching what happened when you move the potentiometer, the frequency slider down, and then going, ooh, and then no sound, but just watching the cone of the speaker move, which was pulsing, 1, 2, 3 kilohertz, hertz frequencies, which are huge. A 1 hertz is like a giant rope. If you ever see people like playing with ropes, physics lessons, remember those? All right, so wave theory. So sitting between two speakers with, these waves, we're essentially messing around with neuroscience and psychoacoustics. We were exposing ourselves to these very, very low frequencies. And I mean, goodness knows what was going on in our brains at that time. But we joke about, dogs going nuts, bats flying into the window, and hearing dolphins that probably don't even exist out there in our dreams. And he was sharing his tapes at the time. And I remember vividly driving down I was at art school in Falmouth, and sitting in the car. It was a sort of rainy day at the beach, just listening to this tape that he'd given a select few of us, which were very, very chuffed to have all his music that he was sharing. And there's this track that came on, do 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 do, Analog Bubble Bath. If anyone knows that tune, the chord that comes in, I got like goosebumps on goosebumps. It was so intense. And at the point which it dropped to the sort of syncopated section, I lost my mind. I was like, this is the most uplifting. I'm getting goosebumps now. Look at that. Just such a euphoric piece of music, and the naivety with which he'd sent an LFO to the pitch on the SH-101 that seemed to be playing like the melody of a dolphin or something. I mean, the bubble bath thing was just lovely. And at that point, I was moving up to study graphic design in Taunton, and also working in a record shop in Exeter called Mighty Force Records. So I took a demo tape in and played it to Mark Darby and the guys there, and they loved it. And then introduced everyone. They signed this record that had 3 of Rich's tracks and 1 co-collaboration, a co-production that I basically went to the studio with, and he helped me, get this first piece of music out of my system, which is bonkers. It was called Entrance to Exit, under the moniker of Schizophrenia. And if I listen to it now, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Like 2 or 3 breakbeats layered up, an orchestral stab sound. You remember T99 and all the classics from the Dutch rave sound. Quadrophonia. It was that time when taking an orchestral sound was like the thing, and then making that syncopated. I mean, it just sounded kind of ridiculous. And then this weird Nina Simone Twisted Sample. I mean, if that ever got released now and anyone did some musicology, and I'd probably be in a lot of trouble, but you couldn't even notice it. It was off a tape. So that was my introduction to sound production, mixing, arranging, engineering, like the whole process, and also going to mastering engineer and understanding that. I then met Mark Pritchard in Taunton. He was playing all the kind of tunes that I was into at a local nightclub. Went up, introduced myself. He came back to my place. I played him the stuff that I'd made, and also the stuff that Richard had made, and his mind was blown. Went to his studio, and he told me that he would literally just set up this label, Evolution Records. So I said, well, look, I'm really keen to collaborate if you're up for it. And we started working as Reload and E621. So I became the flavor enhancer, monosodium glutamate, E621. So you see all the early releases on Evolution had a name of a moniker plus E621. And then eventually we dropped that and it was just Reload. We got signed to Infonet, which is a subsidiary of Sony, and released a collection of short stories. At the same time, we were releasing all kinds of music under different monikers. Global Communication was my initial project idea for this sort of emotions in sound, quite therapeutic, cathartic, ambient electronica that didn't necessarily have to have a dance floor agenda. And through that process, obviously, I was learning more and more about it. Mark was doing a lot of the engineering, and I was doing a lot of the keyboard playing and bringing samples in. So it was a nice collaboration. And obviously, I was observing a master in the studio at the engineering, and what he's doing now with Tom York's album. I mean, I'm so privileged to have, I guess, been mentored and trained by Richard James, the Aphex Twin, Mark Pritchard, working with Tom York, in the studio with Matthew Herbert, Beardy Man, hanging out with Ulrich Schnaus, and I suppose discovering John Hopkins very early on. Being exposed to that caliber of talent, I've been blessed to get an understanding of a whole.
That's a good setup.
It's pretty good. Can't complain.
Even the introduction to Japanese music. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, my dad used to listen to the Beatles, and I got introduced to music through that." No, like this in Japanese, amazing music.
Claude Debussy, but played on synthesizers. And there were two other kind of key albums at that time. One was Jean-Michel Jarre, Oxygen, and I just loved the sound that I was hearing. It gave me goosebumps listening to it. And the other was Vangelis, the music from the series of Cosmos. So Carl Sagan had this TV series, and I remember listening in the background, this music just, again, taking me on a journey, and I loved it. So I think there's the key references, bit of classical, bit of jazz, bit of world music, electronic, and then the b-boy thing, hip-hop. And then all of a sudden you've got that mixed in with, digging back into Vangelis and soundtracks and scores. Brian Eno, huge influence. And Mark and I would sort of, on our trips up and down to London, would listen to all kinds of music. I'd share what I'd discovered, and he'd share what he discovered. And it was really great for, musical education. And again, this is pre-streaming music. We're talking mid-90s. It was tapes, CDs, and then copied onto tapes to play in the car because we didn't have a CD player in the car. So fully analog. And we've released Global Communications with 2 or 3 albums under that moniker, Reload. And then Jedi Knights came up. Jedi Knights was this sort of reaction to what we were seeing in the clubs. The techno scene became very kind of macho, tops off, sweaty club vibe. It was pretty dark. It didn't really resonate with, fun and funk. So we thought, right, the Jedi Knights are here to inject the funk back into the dance floor.
Nice.
And that caught the attention of a lot of individuals across other scenes as well. Like the breakbeat scene, Adam Frieden was really, keen to kind of connect and link into that. So I remember DJing. I was never really doing one style. I was always an eclectic DJ. I played a lot of festivals, playing all kinds of music from, funk, soul, disco, boogie, reggae, all the way through to deep house, techno, drum and bass. We released a record on LTJ Bookham's label, Chameleon. So we've kind of touched on, over our career, every style you can think of. And then got into remixing. Off the back of that, touring, DJing at events. Mark went his way, I went my way. I got heavily into the DJing thing. And through that process, I got really lucky to play to millions around the world. I think 57 countries at this current count. And over that time, I guess I felt like a bit of an observer. Didn't really feel like I was a normal DJ, because for me, it was like a science experiment.
Yeah.
And I'm back to the days of, hanging out with Richard in the studio. It's
I was
like,
going to
what
say,
can you do
the whole
with
story
sound?
sounds like a science experiment.
Absolutely.
In a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So observing, empirically gathering this sort of data of like, how does sound impact people, their health, their well-being, why are they reacting in a certain way? And then you can sort of see through particular tracks that I was creating were absolute science experiments, from the mod wheel stuff, which was like this heavy duty kind of tribal techno, to Cosmos, looking at this more emotional, melodic and harmonic synth pop, but re kind of imagined, precursor to, I guess, the sort of the Eric Pride sound. If you think of what would be the nearest kind of equivalent, that very melodic, progressive, but not quite the typical progressive. So I've kind of spanned many different styles, really into deep house, did some stuff with breaks and drum and bass, and then started making music for everyday life. So I recorded this album called Life Tracks, and the whole concept was soundtracks to life. Is there a piece of music that could maybe be something to listen to in the morning on the way to work, or something to help get you motivated? So, and that's back in 2007. I was already thinking about functional music.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing then. Obviously, no one was even talking about it. But I had this idea that life tracks, soundtracks to life, could be useful for people as opposed to just entertainment.
And what sparked that? Just all that empirical research you've been doing, or?
Yeah, it was just sort of the idea of making music that was useful. Can I be of service here? Can I make more than just music that's telling a story, but can it serve a purpose? And then I got hired. I got very burnt out from the touring and realized that I had to make a decision. And this is like health, mental health, physical health, all relationships. My ability to actually create in the studio was being compromised. And I figured that the best thing to do was just have like a reevaluation, take some time out. And obviously I'd done very well. Couldn't complain with the touring around,
of course,
or the planet, and being paid for it. Wow. Staying in hotels, nice hotels at that. And then out of the blue, I was doing a lot of compilations around that time as well. So not doing so much DJing, but more compiling. And I created 2 albums called The Trip. 2 albums of cover versions, and 3 albums that were taking people on journeys. So Sound of the Cosmos, 3D, and all of them had 2 or 3 CDs that were, again, telling stories in different styles. One was more breakbeat, one was more deep house, one was more chill out and down tempo. And I got to this point of like horizontal music and vertical music. So I'd been building up through the life tracks and these compilations to, I suppose, scoring experiences for people. I got such lovely feedback from them. It's one of the best compilations. I put this on my car and I'm driving, like, yeah, we're onto something here. This is scoring your life. A beautiful memory.
Yeah,
I got hired as a sound architect for Marriott's Starwood Group's Yotel brand, and the guy that hired me was really into my Trip compilation and said, "Look, I'd really like you to come and soundscape the hotel."
Sick.
And I guess at that point, it was the realization that there's a whole other scene or a whole other purpose for creating music for hotel guests. So I started looking into sleep. How could I help guest sleep? I retrained as a sleep science coach and a stress management coach, understood what it is that's missing from your sleep in terms of sleep hygiene best practices. And was there a correlation between what I'd experienced on the road with the extreme burnout, the circadian disruption, which is basically your natural body clock screaming at you saying, you've just gone through, how many time zones? Right, let's count them. LA, over to Sydney, down to Auckland, up to Tokyo, across to Dubai, back to Paris, up to London, back across to New York in the space of like a couple of weeks, which is just relentless. Your poor body doesn't know what's going on. And, you've on a flight, you've had like 5 meals because you've gone through all these time zones. And it's just messed. It's a total mess. And that metabolic confusion really messes with your sleep quality. So I figured it was time to reevaluate, look at how to optimize sleep in terms of the bedroom, in terms of what you do with your body, what you put in your body, what you do with your mind, what you put in your mind, as in exposure to certain things. So really hacking and unpacking best sleep practices. and then developed some sort of strategies around the music that I observed that was really useful. So Global Communication 7614 as an album, we had invited feedback, and the tracks only had duration numbers. They didn't have titles. So he said, it's up to you what you make of these things. Tell us how you feel. Where's it taking you? And the feedback we got was incredible. I mean, I remember one letter handwritten by a soldier. I think it was in Afghanistan or something. He said, look, this, if it wasn't for this tape of this album, I don't think I would have got through this. It's really, really helped me, which, it makes me feel so, I suppose, grateful for the opportunity to share music that has more than just the singular purpose of entertainment, and that it's actually therapeutic and cathartic and useful for, as a therapeutic modality. And the more we got back, being used to give birth to, being used to conceive to. There was like a story about that as like one of the best albums for the bedroom, which is quite funny. And I've actually met kids that are, a result of, well, we won't go there, but it's quite funny. Like, oh, right, so our album, you wouldn't have existed without our album? Whoa, that's quite a thing to say. And
that's
so
impact music there.
Yeah, it's absolute. Yeah,
that's co-creation.
Pro co-creation. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I think I was building up this wealth of experience and knowledge and insight. Everywhere I was playing, I was just looking at how music was affecting people, and then inviting feedback. I've made this ambient track. What do you think of this? How does it make you feel? Yeah. So testing with friends and family. And then having this opportunity with the hotel to create soundscapes and playlists for Mixcloud, where guests could take home and extend the experience. And I love doing those. I've done a ton of them. One day I'd love to be able to license them, because I was really proud of doing these sort of seasonal playlists where each one had a theme. Yeah. It sounded like, springtime,
nice,
evocative of that. And then decided that it was about time that the music that I was making was more clearly defined as a genre. So coming up with this idea of functional music with a function and a purpose, intentional music, in 2018, created an album for Universal called Sleep Better. So quite simply, here is the title.
Straightforward.
Better. It's making, and integrated some sleep hygiene tips, worked with some sleep experts to kind of refine down what would help people, and crafted an album that was intentionally designed for initially active listening. So making you listen to the music to start with, grounding you, making you present, and all the research that we do right now, it's really important. If you're worried about things, you need to make someone present and grounded. So the behavioral psychology and neuroscience of how to get someone in the moment. So you're now not worrying, right, I've got you. Now let's take you on a journey. And so the journey unfolds, it takes you somewhere. And I use a lot of sort of soundscape, ecological geophony and biophony. Geophony being the earth sounds of nature, wind, water, elemental stuff. Biophony being the sounds of creatures, so birds and insects. We're a really interesting species, because when we have that combination of geophony and biophony, we feel pretty safe. It's in our system. Rewind before music, there was nature sound,
of course.
For anything that was now loud and sort of noisy and industrial, we just had bird sound, creature sound, and nature sound, and that was our background support for our nervous system. And then looking at how on this whole journey, human health and well-being, mental health and well-being, I retrained or got certified as a mental health first aider. This is around the time that Avicii passed away, took his own life tragically. And I think that really, that and Keith Flint, and also some personal experience of people that I knew that not quite so known in the industry yet had made this sort of very final decision to end their lives, that as a community, there's this sort of duty of care, like a social responsibility to use these tools in a way to help support. So building communities, using sound as a therapeutic modality. I was really driven to understand, the challenges that we have as musicians, being on the road, having my own burnout, and where we are here at the Future Music Forum. We had a whole holistic day of this yesterday,
right?
Unpacking the problems, the challenges, how to build mental resilience. So I think my mission, my calling changed when I got burnout into being of service. How can I deliver social impact at scale? Can we create musical content, which is a beautiful Trojan horse in the world of arts?
Of course.
Oh, that's lovely music. Yeah, but I just lowered your heart rate, your blood pressure, your cortisol's come down. We've modulated your brainwaves into a parasympathetic state, theta state now. You're super chilled, you're in the zone, and you feel better. Amazing. So often we don't even really need to validate or to support with, the evidence. If it's working and people are observing an effect and it's a reproducible effect, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess my mission now is to unpack as much as possible about all the music that has been designed intuitively, or rather produced intuitively, and what can we learn from that, where an artist is not really even oblivious. They're subconsciously just flowing and channeling and making music that seems to do something to your nervous system. So I talk about my role as a nervous system wizard. How do we modulate your nervous system? Right. Well, meet you where you're at right now. You're triggered. You're stressed out. Life is, anxious, noisy. Everything is a stressor. So, right, if you're in this permanent state of like hypervigilance and arousal, how can we bring you back to this homeostatic balance state? Right. Well, certain tempos of music can literally slow down your breathing and your heart rate just by listening to it. Certain frequencies can literally impact the nervous system physiologically. 40 hertz, there's a ton of research around this incredible magic 40 hertz, which either delivered as a gamma binaural beat, which I'll be honest, doesn't sound nice listening to it. It's a kind of noise. It's not pleasant to listen to.
It's very strange.
Yeah, it's not a nice sound. It's there's harmonic dissonance going on. However, exposure to that with other things in the background can be really supportive to getting in these particular states of flow and focus. 40 hertz delivered vibroacoustically, so if you feel it through a transducer, so a massage table, Subpack, you must have heard of these guys. So delivering particular frequencies to the body, so you're feeling the sound, can deliver all kinds of really impactful effects. We're noticing that patients with dementia and Alzheimer's are responding positively to different types of music therapies, different types of frequencies. I think it's a very promising time because music and sound as a healing modality, as an adjunct to other types of therapies, needs to be embraced. We need more researchers working on projects. We need more platforms that are interested. Obviously, yesterday, listening to Brian from Open Music and Oleg from Endel, it's really encouraging to me that there are a number of individuals out there that task Brain FM, Pazziz. There's a lot of platforms now that are Lucid, Medi Music. There's a lot of them that I'm coming across because to me it's fascinating.
I actually work with one of these music AI for mental health.
Fantastic. Well, so this is the mission, right?
Of course.
How can we help humankind when they're suffering with music? There's so much, variety of music that we can utilize, and I always talk about the opportunity for artists that are maybe struggling, post-pandemic. What do I do now?
Yeah.
And if you think that the wellness industry is valued at 4.7 trillion and expanding at a pretty sort of significant rate of knots, it's a big pie. It's a big pie. Exactly. And I think artists should consider their position with making music and touring and streaming for what, 0.0001 of a cent. I mean, it's depressing that music's being devalued so much on that side of things, yet clearly music has a value. We advertised for a role at White Mirror Studio last week, and it was for sound designer composer for wellness innovation consultancy, working for the likes of Apple, Nissan, some big brands.
Amazing.
Creating Calm, creating content alongside me. And we got 363 applicants in 24 hours.
Wow.
We had to pause it. To me, that's astonishing validation that we're onto something here. That
it's moving quick. It seems.
Yeah. So artists, composers, and creators that are typically background in TV, film, scoring, adverts, game music. They're looking to do more. They want to give back. They want to be of value and service. And to me, this is so encouraging. And the conversations that have happened this year with the likes of Endel doing a deal with Universal, to me it's like it's music to my ears. Finally, right? Okay, so the majors are waking up to this. They see the power in these playlists that are, relax, sleep, focus, that outperform some of the the hip hop playlists. I mean, this is significant.
I mean, it also says a lot about the state that we're in as a species.
Absolutely, it's a reflection of the state of humanity on planet Earth right now. The Anthropocene is not a pleasant place to be in. We could go fully red pill, but we probably won't on this episode. But
we can do a next one, please.
So, in terms of our mission at White Mirror Studio, as a co-founder, I'm working with Rami Al-Nagar, who comes from immersive tech background. We've expanded beyond audio sensory, and we work with the olfactory sense, which is the power of smell. We work with vibroacoustics and tactile sense, so touch. How does what you touch impact in combination with other senses? Taste. And so all the senses that we are aware of right now, we have a very interesting opportunity to design sensory scripts for people in particular situations. So our role at the moment is to look at moments and opportunities in the day where nervous system has been disrupted into a negative state. Yeah. How do we bring you back to a positive state that's more healthy? And that could be with sound, it could be with scent, it could be with things that you're looking at. So we've been awarded a fund from a company in Germany we work with called Wund, part of the Therma Group. You may have heard of Superblue. And we're working with the IAM lab at Johns Hopkins University in the States to unpack intentional space design. And it'll be the first study of its kind to really go deep into what is it about these senses, these sensory modalities, through the lens of the arts, neuroaesthetics, where we respond in particular ways to what we see, what we hear, what we feel, what we taste, what we touch. Can we create some guiding principles to help all the brands that are looking in this space? So fingers crossed, by early next year, we'll have a publication that will demystify the sensory congruence that we're after. Because for me, obviously, I suppose sound and music and sleep, and these are things that anxiety, pain, these are all like the low-hanging fruit of things I can do with sound. But I'm really interested in how we can work with other sensory experts and create experiences. So going into an art gallery or an immersive gallery, why does it just have to be the same old, same old? What if it's a healthy experience? You go in feeling something, and then you come out feeling better. That's measurable and reproducible. Yeah. That's the mission.
Fantastic.
Just to sort of wrap up, our mission on what we do on the sound side. So I'm hoping that no one's going to steal these concepts, but what I've done is created analogs of pharmacological intervention. So when we talk about reduction of anxiety, we talk about an anxiolytic. So I've come up with this idea of an audio anxiolytic or sonic anxiolytic, and then for pain management, an analgesic, so audio or sonic analgesics, and then for sleep, hypnotics, so audio hypnotics or sonic hypnotics. And so we've got an interesting way of maybe how doctors at some point might help their patients by prescribing audio or audio sensory analgesics, anxiolytics, hypnotics, and other adjuncts to go along with the types of medications that are working just to boost the impact of the effect. So very exciting time for moving this scene from what seems to be just audio into audio pharmaceutical.
Yeah. Do you see this actually being embraced by physicians as well, slowly?
Well, I'm really encouraged when I talk to friends that are general practitioners and working in particular areas like cardiologist friend, and I talk about the research that we're doing and where could we add value. And my cousin's ex-husband is working in pain mitigation in a hospital trust, and I would really like to sort of collaborate and see how can we help this recovery from either pre-operative anxiety, the pain of post-operative surgery, and then optimizing recovery. There's all these very interesting areas where sound and music could actually boost recovery time. I mean, I don't know if you've been in a hospital any time recently, but they're frightening places, from a sensory perspective. Yeah. The look, the smell, the sound, there's like neat. There's like beeping things. There's, it just sounds terrifying. So if we could re-soundscape,
reimagine that
different
whole space
environments.
as well.
Yeah, so healthcare, education, transport, the number of verticals and sectors where sound and music has an opportunity to positively impact with other congruent sensory modalities is basically what white mirrors are all about.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Can you maybe explain the difference in producing vertical and horizontal music that you mentioned earlier?
So when we talk about vertical and horizontal music, what we mean by that is vertical being physically vertical when you're listening to the music, and how much that could be utilized for what you do when you're mobile and standing up or moving. So it could be dancing, it could be various types of work, it could be fitness. And then conversely, for horizontal music, it's music for purposes of more, relaxation. So if one is delivering a nervous system shift to the eustress state, not distress, we don't want to go fully sympathetic, but we're considering people getting a positive health benefit by increasing heart rate, by delivering that sort of level of energy burst, mood shift, even cognitive state enhancement. And then for horizontal, it's the opposite. Let's go parasympathetic. Let's get you into that super relaxed state, which to me is, always been about the horizontal mode. So hope that clears that up.
Yeah, for sure. If people want to find you or maybe interested in soundscaping itself or where that's going, where can they find you?
So please do come and check out our website, whitemirror.studio. That's our company, the Wellness Innovation Consultancy, and there's a few links on there. If you want to find me, I believe I'm on SoundCloud, I'm on Spotify as well, and Apple Music and all the major sort of streaming platforms under my name. Equally, you can come and find me professionally on LinkedIn, and I'm on Twitter as well. I'm occasionally on Instagram. I've been pausing recently for smart reasons, and I think those that understand the benefits of not being fully on social media will know that it really does help with your mental health and well-being and your productivity. So I've been loving the last month, getting a lot done and feeling very, very clear, not triggered at all. So yeah, they're the main sort of platforms.
As always, the very last question: what is the power of music?
For me, the power of music is transformative. It's looking at a state or shift, a change in mood and energy for a benefit that maybe you were not aware of. Whilst sound and music initially is for entertainment, we see it as more than that. We see it as a positive benefit to our overall mental, physical, social, economic well-being. And that, to me, is the power of music.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for listening. If you want more information about JM, or you would like to get involved, visit www.jmi.net. At JMI, we are on a mission to make the world more musical. That's why we created Mubazar, a digital platform that helps us manage all our musical activities across 80 countries worldwide, connecting musicians with opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. If you are a music professional looking for a better way to manage and promote your music activities, check out Mubazar. Created for music organizers, by music organizers, Mubazar allows you to run music competitions, workshops, camps, auditions, masterclasses, awards, events, and much more. Mubazar offers custom application forms, payments for your activities, jury tools, translations, analytics, and more. Mubazar is fast becoming the best place for musicians to find and apply for music opportunities online, and you can sign up today for a free organizer account by going to www.mubazar.com, registering and then requesting to upgrade to an organizer on the right-hand menu. For more info, don't hesitate to get in touch via support@mubazar.com. It would mean a lot to us if you could give us 1 minute of your time and rate and review the podcast. In case you have any suggestions or would like to be one of our next guests, feel free to reach out to us through the JMI socials.